Hello my dear friends and welcome back to another Acolyte video. As I established in my full episode breakdown, Chimere is a Sith apprentice. He needed an Acolyte. But now that May has fallen through, he's going to try and recruit Osha. But who is the big bad? A very subtle line of dialogue confirms a theory I put forward 2 weeks ago. I think it's Mother Korril, the Zabrak who carried the twins after Mother Anastasia created them. Yord tells Osha, Chimere can get inside your head and stay there, and Osha replies, my mother could do that. Are they confirming that Mother Korril is the big bad? And the reason I say this is the mysterious vat in the Witch Coven could have been a laboratory very similar to what Darth Plagueis did in Star Wars Legends, a fascination with creating life. And Chimere seemed to know quite a lot about what took place on Brendok. But in wider discussions concerning Episode 5, there is another controversy, this time surrounding something very peculiar the episode introduced, and fans seem divided about this. This all concerns Chimere's helmet. While fighting the Sith, Master Soul says to him, quote, you trained May, let me see your face. Chimere then replies, and let you read my thoughts? No. Now we've heard a lot of reasons why the Sith cover their faces in Star Wars canon, or some of them, with the main theory being to obscure their identities. But this is the first time it's been suggested one of the reasons is to stop the Jedi reading their minds. It's a powerful advantage, and some have compared it to Magneto's helmet in X-Men. On the one hand, this has received praise. One commenter wrote, there hasn't been an example of this in Star Wars canon or legends I could find. Another said, a little surprised, as it is some good lore building to an original Star Wars series. Others are not too convinced. And more importantly, how could Palpatine read Darth Vader's thoughts, especially in the canon comics? Not to mention, it breaks original trilogy canon, since even Luke can sense his father's inner conflict while Vader is wearing the helmet. Could it be because Chimere is wearing cortosis? Is it something he thinks is protecting him? Master Soul said he has a presence that feels familiar, so maybe Chimere thinks it's going to protect his identity and thoughts from the Jedi, but it's not. Also, Rey could read Kylo's thoughts. It was predominantly when he was helmetless, but not uniquely. So, does this break Star Wars canon? We need to understand the context of Chimere's helmet and outfit, and the fact it could be like the amulets from Star Wars Legends, a haunted helmet of sorts that shields and protects the wearer. It could be specific to his helmet. Nonetheless, opinions on the 5th episode have been significantly more positive than those for 3 and 4. Did you know, my dear friends, Leslye Headland just teased the next 3 episodes of The Acolyte are nothing like what you expect. She says, we're going into new territory. Entertainment Weekly have the exclusive scoop with Leslye Headland, who broke down some of the more shocking aspects of the episode titled Night. And I've got to say, Leslye Headland likes Star Wars when it's dark, and a major reveal, the scene where Jeki and the other Jedi die, was directly inspired by Anakin killing the younglings during Order 66, and the cast was certainly taken aback by the savagery. Amanda Sternberg remembers, we were all like, Leslye, the way you take them out is so brutal. What the hell? What kind of sick, twisted masochist are you? And Headland's response, I guess I always thought, well, Anakin killed a bunch of children, so... And here's a big one. Manny Jacinto confirms Chimere is a Sith. So if there was any doubt, fans saying the context in which he said it means it might have been a question mark, no, he is a Sith. And here's something you may not have guessed. Daphne Keane, Jeki Lon herself, actually thought killing off the Jedi was a good idea. She says, if you're not making it dangerous, then why are we even here? I certainly agree. I think the stakes need to be higher, and in this episode they definitely were. And finally, a massive tease for what's to come. Leslye Headland wants us to know, the final line spoken by the stranger, which is what they're calling Manny Jacinto's character, Smiler Ren, is going to be very important, setting up the 3rd act of the show. What extraordinary beings we are. Even in the revelation of our triumph, we see the depth of our despair. And Leslye teases, quote, we're going into completely different territory. Now it's a different world that we're going to introduce you to. And it's not just a new story, but new motivations for all of the different characters. And going forward, something that makes me think the mothers or mother is still involved in some way is the show is really all about family. Star Wars is all about family. It's a soap opera in space, a space opera. And this episode really touched upon many different hints, which I think come together the next time we're going to see Brendok, whether it's Chimera taking Osha back there, or whether it's the other flashback episode, which is rumoured to either be in episode 6 or 7. There is a lot to look out for, and I think Leslye Headland is saying the third act is very, very different, my dear friends. And it's also worth noting at some point, Vernestra Rwoh comes to Kofar, ignites her lightsaber whip. That is a frame from the trailer we've not seen in the show. Also, there's the flashback of Kalnaka fighting Torbin, and this frame of the witches with their eyes blackened. That's part of the flashback. So moving on, let's look at what the media have been saying. Dexerto calling this episode the darkest Star Wars ever seen. Most of the reviews very impressed, but this piece deserves attention. Despite phenomenal episode 5, the Acolyte rating keeps dropping. Why? They go into the subject of review bombing, but they also talk about the fact that one great episode, one solid episode, is not enough in the short time of one day to make the ratings go back up. The quote is this: "The Acolyte is far from the best Star Wars show, and we will certainly have to wait for the last 3 episodes to be released to draw a final conclusion. Episode 5 really did show signs of turning things around, and I agree with this. It was certainly the strongest of the season so far, especially if this level of action and suspense is maintained until the end. But the 25,000 odd reviews for the first 4 episodes definitely overpower the voices of approval for episode 5. And I'm talking about fans who legitimately in good faith reviewed the show. Are we going to see a change of tune in the fandom generally speaking? Is this a significant turning point? I think it all depends on the landing. 6, 7 and 8. 3 weeks to go. Episode 5 was a good start for the second half of the season. Still not perfect. I do think the twins and their dynamic was a bit off. The change of heart for May did come as a surprise for most fans in the last episode. So we still have a lot to watch and a lot to help us make up our mind. And now we're really seeing the Sith come out of his shell. I think that's been the most impressive aspect. Seeing the choreography, which was certainly refreshing, but the backlash for episode 5 is nowhere near what it was just a week or 2 ago. It even impressed the senior contributor over at Forbes. They've been more critical in their reviews, but they said this: "Tuesday night's episode of The Acolyte is definitely the best so far, but the series feels weighed down by its clunky first half. And even this episode, a marked improvement in many ways, had its share of issues. Still, overall I had a lot more fun with Night than any of the previous episodes." That's really my stance too, by the way. And I'm interested in seeing the criticisms. I laid down mine in my last video, but they said this. In the section called The Bad, "I'm totally fine with Zipperface," that's a funny name for him, "being super powerful and killing a bunch of Jedi. But it's a little disappointing to see him kill pretty much all the extras, all of whom were trained Jedi so easily. It's almost a bit laughable. I'd have preferred a 45-minute episode where each of those Jedi put up a fight, and each were taken down by their more powerful and devious opponent." See, this is where I disagree. Because the premise, I can kind of see their point of view, but we've got to note, whether it's Jeki or Yord, they were not the most powerful Jedi. None of these are council members, and most of them were knights or padawans. Yord, as we found out in the first episode of the show, was just recently promoted to knight. And remember this, we're at a time when the Jedi are supposedly in their era of gold and light, and they're more elevated and they think they're the most powerful beings in the galaxy. So even though their training is stringent, it's not at a time of great despair or war. And as such, you have to assume on some level these Jedi are not as powerful as they think, and definitely not prepared for a Sith. They're trying to show us how powerful Chimera was, and I was here for it. Maybe it's because I'm a fan of Manny Jacinto and I love his character Chimera, but I don't have a problem with the way he absolutely destroyed these Jedi. I personally want to see the Sith powerful. I'm a big fan. So the next criticism, speaking of which, maybe last week's episode could have included some scenes establishing who all these Jedi were, and getting us to like and care about them. This I agree with. Maybe not every Jedi. We did have some attachment to Jeki Lon, but what about the Keldor, or some of the other background characters? In last week's episode they did waste a significant amount of time, especially fighting those beetles, so in a way the deaths of the Jedi in episode 5 were lessened. They say we cared when Jeki Lon died because we had more time to get to know her. Yord. Can't say I shed any tears for that guy. I agree. Yord has his fandom. The Yord Horde, as they call themselves, I am not a fan. I think he was a pretentious, holier than thou Jedi, just the worst. Then they say, I thought Osha's little trick, sticking a lit up pip to the back of the Sith to draw the alien bugs, was goofy. It was, but so is a lot of Star Wars. You know, I learned to just live with those kind of creative decisions. I don't think they're the biggest sin. The show has definitely not been the most serious Star Wars series so far, so a little goofiness never hurt. Earlier in the episode, Osha tells Yord to put away his lightsaber because he'll draw in the bugs. Then for reasons, they don't descend until Pip is lit up. I also thought this was strange. When Osha tells Yord this, they're literally in the bit of the forest where the bugs were. And then later, until conveniently, Pip is placed on Chimea's back. It's all for plot convenience. And yes, as they say, Pip is brighter than a lightsaber. Do you guys agree with these criticisms? And what are your thoughts? Let me know down below. Please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video. May the Force be with you, always.